with my esteemed producer, Alex Kushner. Today, we're going to talk about the election. It seems like a good thing to talk about on a Monday in August, right? The election, presidential election. Just nothing to see here. Nothing to see here. Today, I want to, as we are on live on LinkedIn, recorded coming to you later on YouTube. Part of this season that we've been talking through these lives are just the current what's going on in the world. And you brought this up in our conversation that I mentioned this in one of our previous lives is who's going to determine this election? Right. And I think it is as we are getting deeper into the season of, I'm rubbing my face because it is that as we get into this deeper election season, we're starting to see that I would say it's almost don't let your eyes be deceived. Mm-hmm. And there's an element there as we were talking about this beforehand and you question, well, what do you mean by that?
Right.
So I'll kind of let you expound on that and then we'll get into our discussion today.
Yeah, no, Tyler, always excited to chat it up with you on our Monday Newswire. With election season here coming down the wire, I think the DNC actually starts today. Which is another, exciting time for all the
if exciting means polarizing, then it's exciting.
No, it's fun. I was at one covering it when I worked at the Huffington Post. Okay. Crazy stories. Those people party just like anyone else. Just so you know.
Just let it go.
But,
all right.
Yeah, they let loose. Which is good, we can find commonality, and everything. Everyone's a human. But we were talking about who will determine the election, and we're specifically talking about age ranges. Go from baby boomers to Gen X to millennial to Gen Z, and actually Gen Z is Gen Z not the youngest anymore that's in the voting age?
No, Gen Z is the youngest voting age. So
yes,
my daughter, who will be 18 this fall, is right in about the middle of Gen Z. Yeah, and so she is just into that.
And they
so we have another election of before Gen Alpha.
A little bit before. So we were reading. I was going through some research and reading some articles just about where does Gen Z and millennials kind of fit into all this? And reading in the U.S. News and World Report, the number one thing that I would say that it said that my demographic, which I'm a millennial and below, your daughters in that age range, is really cost of living. And as the number one thing, which does not seem to be going down, especially if you're in any sort of major city like LA or New York or San Francisco. And so that is the number one thing that they are worried about within this election. And it's, that's got to sway. And then also are, these Gen Zers going to head to the polls, and who are they going to be voting for at the polls? And if you kind of go, into the, Pew Research study, which again, what I was going to talk about, we always have a meeting before we go live, right? To just discuss some of this research. And it seems it's like trusting the data.
I think that's an underlying for all of it. What can we trust today? What do you trust? I mean, to me, what's been amazing over the last month, 5 weeks since we had the Republican National Convention is obviously we had Biden step aside, Harris step in, and, as much as you try, yes, I have a political, I would say, direction, but I don't have a political dog in the fight, meaning I don't care when it comes down to who does the popular media need to be talking about more the other. And overwhelmingly, I don't think you can read any article that is pro-Trump right now. There's nothing, nowhere. It is how much he is just not getting it right. And oh my goodness, Harris is just, she is the savior. I mean, it really is, and that may be very tongue-in-cheek, but that is what, in my eyes, as I see it portrayed, and that lies a whole lot of, is that because, and let's go back to a lot of media, is that because that's going to get the clicks?
Right. And Tyler, I don't know if you saw the Musk Trump interview on X.
I did not. I heard about it, but I did not see it.
I tried to catch some of it. I was listening to it. It was very long, and it was nothing new that I really hadn't heard before.
Okay.
There were some good things. It was good. It was fine, but I will say, just if you look at the sheer engagement numbers, right?
Yeah.
That interview did. It was like the reach was like 1.2 billion, like 20 million, 30, 40, 50 million views on this one platform. And then they showed all the headlines of all the media outlets, because in the beginning, there was a technical issue because they were getting hacked. So they had to delay it for an hour. All the headlines by basically almost all major news outlets that covered it, that's all they took. Oh, there was a major issue with this. And you, to what you were saying, just like sit back and you're like, how do you trust some of this data when I'm even just trying to research about, does this demographic actually feel this way towards the candidate? Because if you read it, everyone really loves Harris if you're a young person in this country. That's how I would have, if I just.
Well, I mean, let's go on. I'm going to say it right now. This is the overwhelming feeling. If you aren't willing to vote for a black female, then you are a racist, sexist. You are the worst person in the world. And it's just kind of like, if that's how we're judging leadership based upon sex and race, then we have a big problem. And yet being willing to just outwardly say that is probably going to get people that come after me. And it's at that, just stop and listen to the words. Should I vote someone based upon their sex and their race? No. Never. That does not make a leader. That does not qualify a leader. That is not how you should select anyone. I don't care if they are black, white. It doesn't matter. How are they going to serve people? How are they going to lead people? What does our country need right now? And I think those are the big challenges. And so many people feel like, I'm just going to go run and hide in the hills as I look out my window at the hills. Like, I'm just going to, and that's where we've gotten to again in this complete political sphere, because I don't want to say rational, because everyone justifies their opinions as rational, but I would say encompassing views, being willing to accept the viewpoints of others are being challenged right now, because it's like, don't play the shell game with me. Don't hide from the reality in your very structured, very manicured presentations, when the reality is that that's not the life we're all living.
Yeah,
it's not. It's the life we're living today in, I would say, the overwhelming majority, if not all of the United States, is, man, it costs a whole lot more to exist today than it did 4, 8, 12, 16 years ago. Go back in time. It cost way more. And why have those costs come? And yet as we want to talk about this, or, certain candidates have been forward in talking about, and all of a sudden it's like, well, we need to control all the costs. And yet you're like, wait a second, when you get rid of capitalism and you march against economics, that's really scary. And yet that's, again, nothing to see here. We're here to save. Again, it's very frustrating, because it seems like very few people are willing to say, it doesn't make sense.
Well, Tyler, there's a couple areas we can go into. The first thing I want to say is, you have a daughter, right?
Yeah.
Just to stay on topic of who's right in that. Will she be 18?
Yep.
Okay. So she's able. Okay. First and foremost, what is she and her friend group kind of looking at? Do you ever hear what they're saying? Do they talk about it? Is it really not an issue that they talk about? Can you give any context to that?
It's fear. I don't even want to. I'm so afraid of the whole process. For example, my daughter got her primary ballot, and she was so upset that she got it. She's like, I didn't sign up for that. I don't want to do it. And almost like there is so much fear and angst attached to it.
Right.
Because that's the political fear, that I just want to, please don't even throw my name into consideration of having a voice.
Right.
And as I was talking to her about it, it's like, I remember being 18, and I don't remember which election was my first election to vote. Probably it would have been 2000, would have been the first election. And I was, at that point, a senior in college. I just probably didn't care. I didn't expect it to be that big a deal. And, there are people, both sides of that. There are people extremely adamant. There are people, like my older sister who, is just so into it. And I was like, not my thing. But the feeling I get from my daughter is just so much angst, tension, and fear.
Well, and where does that, is it the positioning of like the friends, like, oh, are you going to vote for Trump if you vote for Kamala? Like, just because you vote for this person, they're getting pigeonholed into a certain group. Is that where it's coming from? The angst and the fear, or is it is it societal? Is it community driven?
And I think back as you're asking that, there was an instance where she made a comment and a family member absolutely lashed out at her. And, there was a comment where I think it was at that point, I want to say it was, a pro-Democrat comment. It was whatever, neither here nor there. And the family member is, I feel bad for you. And it was just like, oh my goodness, dude. Seriously? Like, she's a little girl. Like, everyone's opposed to their opinions. And I think that's very much our world that we live in. It's so polarizing, and there's figures in lives that want to stronghold, and it can be the media. And it could be you are less than a person if you will consider a candidate that is anything other than what is deemed virtuous.
Right. Again,
I didn't say either line, either way, because both parties will sit and say we are more virtuous than the other.
They will. They will.
Gosh. Like, let's understand what we're actually addressing here. Where have we gone sideways in policy that we need to correct that, because the path we're following is not going to yield positive things long term. It's only going to continue to either confound or, complicate.
Yeah. And I think the leadership doesn't help. The way they attack one another, right? The way these leaders, whether it be Biden or Harris or Trump, you listen to, I was listening to the Trump interview with Musk, and, I can't help but like, dude, the guy, he just the way he reacts to things, you're just like, it's childish. Like, some of it's childish. And you're just kind of like, oh, like, it's just the way he is. And I get it. That's how he is as a person. Like, he ain't going to change. And then the other side's doing it. And it's like, you're
here's the big challenge. Here's the big challenge. And this was said to me by a mentor, and I'm going to put it, both of them.
Yeah.
If we're sitting here and we're saying, all right, Alex, you and I, we're going to vote for a leader. Who are we going to vote for? Neither one of them are leaders.
I was going to say, I don't know.
One's a negotiator. One is, give Donald Trump credit for what he's doing. He is a master negotiator.
Businessman. He's a businessman.
He has done that for 50 some years. He's willing to take risks. He will negotiate the best deal for whichever his party, when I say his party, it's his business interest, it's his personal interest, whatever that may be, that's what he's going after. And you just watch it play out, and he's going to accomplish that.
Yeah.
And then when you look at, Harris on what she's been about since her career as a attorney general, whatever else, it is, you could equate it for what it is, but it's not about bringing the masses together. It is, I'm going to, I'm really going to, and I don't even know how to describe it properly, because in fairness, I don't have enough context of her quote unquote leadership career to understand what she's really about. And that's my own ignorance. And that's not saying anything against it, but it also comes back to is like, what's your stake in the ground? What are you trying to do with people? And the difference with leadership is not about me. Leadership is how can I serve others. In our political arena is not that today. And the real leaders are not allowed to survive because it's become this major career. And the career is, how can you lie to people enough, but stay within your character that you get what the position. And that's the reality of it. I mean, you catch every single candidate and they're all caught in lies, and they're never like, the only one that I've heard that's kind of accepted some of his, yeah, I did that, was Vance. Like, Vance has been very forward about, yeah, that was me. I was dumb. But here's the interesting thing about Vance. He's the first presidential candidate, vice president, president, who's in the information age.
Yeah, he's
Think
young.
about it. He's 39. So he's 39.
In between us.
So
right there.
Yeah,
right,
he is of the age where he had a high school, I wouldn't say not blueprint, but a high school where he's got all these things that, I wish that wasn't out there. Like my friends and I talk about, like, thank the Lord that we didn't have that in high school and college, because it would just be like the questions we would have to answer. Well, he's got it.
Yeah.
Harris doesn't. Walz doesn't. Trump doesn't. None of the rest of them have all of that baggage. He's the one that is like, yeah, you caught me in a picture in high school or college, and I was dressed up in drag because, that's what stupid high school and college boys do. Yeah. Okay, got it. If you think they didn't, then you're ignorant, because that's what they do, right? Totally. You do stupid stuff that you think is fun.
You're young.
And he's owning it. Again, I'm not vouching or whatever. This isn't to get into it, whatever.
I know,
but
it's, yeah. So, but just like to your point, like, this is what they do. They attack one another, and like it feels like they don't want to move the ball down the field and elevate, and be a leader. Like you were kind of alluding to, like this leadership that what Maxwell and that whole community preaches. Like you were saying, they're not leaders. Then okay, they're not. Then what is a leader imposed to a negotiator and a, I don't know, an operator?
I mean, I'm going to go back to the vision that I have of someone who was a leader. Was Kennedy. And I'm going to give you one example in that he expressed to a nation leadership. When in 1960, he said, before the decade ends, we will put a man on the moon. At that point, they had such little, development into aerospace technology that it was like, it won't happen by the end of the millennia, much less the end of the decade. Right. 8 years later, they put a man on the moon. That was an example of leadership, that I'm going to cast a vision that is going to drive us forward into future. And that's done in a way that is not only possible, but within a system we can make it creative. There's some leaders today in our country that said, hey, we're going to move to 100%, non-fossil fuel energy. It's like, okay. Unfortunately, that has cost our society a lot. When people ask, why are our food prices and consumable prices so high, there's, in my opinion, one reason and one reason only, is because we've lived for much of the last 4 years with 2 times the energy costs of before. Yeah. And it is just all applicable input costs. It is what it is. I'm not saying get whatever you can talk about fossil fuel, and it's when you make that, it's going to cost you. It is absolutely going to cost you, because we didn't have the infrastructure to be able to do it. You need a longer term plan to roll that out and do so, and don't make yourself so vulnerable. Mm-hmm. So when I think about Kennedy and that style of leadership, and he's viewed as one of the top, 3 or 4 presidents ever. Yeah, mm-hmm. He is, because he had a vision and he brought people together on both sides of the aisle to accomplish something great. And if we think about that, when was the last time we had a president really did that and really spoke of that? I mean, George W. Bush did a little bit after 9/11, but then we've had this like turmoil of, either social right, which I'm not saying is bad, but it's at the cost of someone else. Instead of we all need to be better together, it's, well, I need this race to be better than the others. Like, no, it doesn't work. It's what I learned from Malcolm Gladwell. He shared when I was at an event last week about, when you don't do DEI right. And for example, he shared there was an organization where they wanted to have more, female involvement. Mm-hmm. So they did what so many organizations have done and absolutely failed. They brought in tokens. And tokens, I mean, they had a 10 person unit, and they replaced one of the males with a female. So now they had 1 female, 9 males, and nothing changed. And nothing changed because everyone knew, and she knew too. She was just there because she was a token. And so she was fighting that uphill fight. And at the same point, everyone, whether they understood or not, looked at her as she's just the token. And, through surveys, through discussions, through research, they understood, no, what you need to do is instead of having one person, you need to have 3 or 4. So there's more of a consensus. So it doesn't feel like one person's isolated. If you're going to change it, and not this, I'm going to, just kind of, I'll put up the impressions. And so when we look at our political society, we want to make changes, but yet we don't understand how to make the changes, and everyone just plays to appease. And unfortunately, those changes can be hard and difficult. Yeah. And that's where leadership has to go through that and not play in the, I'll do the hard and difficult, but only if it gets me votes. I'll do the hard and difficult until it costs me. It's like, no, a leader fights through the hard and difficult because that's the right thing to do.
I want to go back to the data and to the demographics, to the Gen Zers. If we know
the topic for today.
Yeah. Let's go back to the topic. No, I think it's okay. If we don't trust the data, right? We are saying that there's something fundamentally wrong and incorrect with what we're seeing.
It seems very peculiar.
Yes, and inconsistent with what you're seeing even on social. Like if you go to X and you go to these social platforms and you see the numbers and the engagement rates where anything that has to do with Trump or Harris, like the Trump stuff seems to, and his engagement seems to massively outweigh that. And I don't know if that's because it gets skewed by global data or not, but it seems to be. And then if that's where young Gen Zers are spending most of their time and how they're consuming news and information, right? They're not going to Fox and MSNBC and the New York Times. They're not. So
they don't even know that exists,
right? Is mainstream media just caught in that loop? Like, we're gonna ride till we die. Baby boomers. Till you die, we're gonna keep rolling here with all this bullshit, basically. And there will become a time when that shifts, or like, how does this all play out, or I don't know. I would love your thoughts here.
I want to layer in a couple things. This election will be younger than the last election, primarily because we have baby boomers aging out, passing away. You have a younger generation that is growing in their, more millennials that are getting involved. I don't think it's going to look a whole lot different than the last election because we're still at a generational tilt, meaning there's less 18-year-olds each day than there are someone that turned 65 or 70. So there's still a tilt in numbers, but we will get younger. And what people care about younger is dramatically different. I saw one of these things today that, so much of a younger generation is, there's the work-life balance. There is the what is important to you in life and not getting caught in the show. One thing I just picked up and what you had shared with me, which I agree with this, and it said 45 and under does not buy into this, oh my goodness, democracy is at stake. Like where is this narrative coming from that democracy is at stake? Democracy got lost about 15 years ago, 30 years ago, when it was no longer we're going to work together. Democracy was lost at that point. When all of a sudden it became so polarized and so vicious, democracy was lost because now it is just special interests. So democracy was lost a long time ago.
I agree. And, and let's stay on that because I think that's true in terms of democracy, freedom of speech. I mean, can we say, like, look at the comedies that are written today? I mean, we're talking about just comedy, making people laugh. I mean, everything feels just like about 10, maybe it was 10 years ago. Maybe it was 15, but like that whole movement, I mean, just seemed to kill, comedy and how things are written in Hollywood and anywhere else. I mean, it just nothing's the same.
The idea of free speech, even though it's free, the cost has gone up tremendously because of social backlash.
Yeah.
Whether you want to call it keyboard warriors. Okay, I describe it that way, where people aren't willing to. Yeah, I mean, there's part of the conversation I want to have with an individual on a podcast later this year is, he made the mention of having a platform where he has equal followers on, both political spheres. And he talked about willing to have the conversation in the middle. And in my conversation with him, when we have it here, is, yeah, but the people in the middle are so afraid to have it because of the absolute backlash that's going to come for just saying, yeah, this is my experience. This is what I see. I'm okay if you tell me I'm wrong, but this has just been what I have a vantage point of it. And we have gotten to our place in society where unless you are the most bold and outspoken, get in someone's face, you're wrong. And it's like, that yes, we have, constitutional freedom of speech, but societal, we don't. It's been lost, to your point about comedy. So going back to it, this election will be different because of age and how that changes going forward. The baby boomers are going to have less as a percentage vote in this election compared to the last, and it'll even be more so the next one. The thing that's interesting there is what the generations care about. I mean, getting back to do we feel like democracy is, hanging in the balance? I don't. So where's that coming from? Like, where's that narrative that's saying it's such a big deal? Because what's getting squashed in all of this is not the taxation of our country. That'll be a constant battle in every single election because that is what people, think they need to talk about at election time. It's no different than, the people that are afraid to talk about tithing at church. It's like, it's the same story. It's just, all right, like you got to pay taxes because you have to do at some point. What does it look like in order to pay for things? But the thing that is interesting there is, the greatest way to affect cost of living is competition.
Yeah.
And how do you get rid of competition? You put in regulation. And not saying that some regulation isn't good, but do you go to Economics 101? It's a class I failed, but I learned. Right? One of the two classes at Cornell I failed was econ. Because I just didn't do the work. I was a senior. I didn't care. I thought it would be
You're ready to go party.
I'd already taken enough business and econ classes. I thought I could just kind of wing it. But, the greatest way to manipulate to a negative is to put in regulations.
Yeah.
I mean, that will absolutely falsify price values. And so how do you fix going forward our cost of living? And you increase competition. You make it easier to compete domestically. And then all of a sudden now we can start to, allow things to play out as opposed to falsifying it because we either devalued the dollar. Yeah.
I was gonna, I was gonna challenge you a little bit on the democracy part. There are some of those who say that if Harris were to win, we go further down the avenue of socialism or potentially into communism. Do you buy that?
You're really putting me on the spot here, Alex.
Hey, man, this is what we're here for.
We already have. Here's my viewpoint. Again, part of the requirement in the United States to be a voting person is to be a citizen. And that's already played out. We don't care about that, right? And I view that every citizen, male, female, regardless of race, should have the right to vote. Well, you also have a requirement to pay taxes. You also have a requirement as to be fiscally responsible as a citizen. Well, all of a sudden, that fiscal responsibility is not matched with a vote. Then all of a sudden, it's not. When we get into do we want to have free enterprise or do we want to be vast with regulation and controls? And, it's one thing that has been interesting to me and just a viewpoint and study is when a lot of the social welfare programs came through in the mid 20th century, the agencies that stopped being the societal care were the private enterprise, the church, the community centers, those things. And we started moving away from the societal pressures of, hey, I will take care of you, but you need to contribute, to the point of government will take care of you and support you. And we've seen a lower decline. We've seen a reduced, societal input to say, I need to contribute back. It's just like, oh, they'll give it to me. And so that is, to me, if you look at the definition of socialism, is it's just going to be spread throughout everyone. There's not equal part. There's not a, even different religions are faced with, are they capitalistic or are they socialistic? Well, the one I'm most familiar with, Christianity, there's a socialistic part of it. We need to take care of everyone, but there's also a capitalistic part of it that is, if you have it, go make it. But that's to take care of others and not limit what someone can do because we want to hold them down. And so it's kind of like the more you can go do, but also give to people. But then there's also a convicting, I need to give back in part. And so my viewpoint is, it really has. And when we've chosen as a government to say, we will not, if we look at, hey, homelessness is in, I would say homelessness and drug abuse is two of the largest factors affecting our society. Part of it is driven by, economics. Part of it's driven by, loneliness, all of it, right? And when you see agencies that are private enterprise that have a high rate of impact, meaning they are helping people and they are, are very effective in rehabilitation, right? And yet they are not open to federal funding because they have a different faith basis. That's a problem.
Yeah,
that's a problem. Because then all you're saying is like, well, we're just creating it. Hey, we don't care what you do. We just want a money grab. You don't have to be successful. If you're doing it and you don't have a belief component to it, man, we'll give you all the money, all you want. And there's people that are absolutely abusing that system. And then there are people like, no, you're like AA. AA is a very Christian-based organization. And yet our society appreciates it because it is so effective, right? I would guess by that and understand that, and maybe I'm wrong, that they aren't open to federal funding because they have a faith component to it, a requirement, but yet they're wildly effective. Yeah. And those things really question me to say, do we want to actually help people? And again, if it was a Buddhist system and yet it was highly effective to people, but it helped them, okay, right? Allow that to, instead of getting in front of your beliefs and say it has to be one or the other, hold on to your beliefs to know I just need to serve and help people. And if my beliefs are truly hold, it will play out in time. It's like, great, do you. And even all of the religions, all of those bases at their core want to care for people. It's where they get abused that we get into such the problem. And, getting back to your comment, I do believe we've gone into far too much of a socialistic society and see even more of it coming through massive regulation, through, trying to, I don't want to say whitewash our entire society, and whitewash meaning let's make everything the same.
Right.
And instead of embracing differences and applauding differences, but not trying to ostracize others to populate those differences. Hey, if you're different, great. But don't tell me that I can't be different, because that's wrong. Yeah. Because it's just not fair.
I agree. To wrap things up, let's wrap it up in the focus of this episode, which is maybe some hot takes or predictions. At the end of the day, after post-election, Gen Z, this young demographic, who do you think they vote for more so Do you think Trump gets their vote, or do you think Harris gets their vote, and why? Maybe I'll start. From my experience, I'm in Florida, but I moved from California. Going through social media, my friends group, I have there does feel to be a shift that has happened post assassination attempt, where just Trump seems to have the upper hand in a lot of young people just based off of the way he handled it. Prior, I would say it was hard. Biden was going down the decline on mentally, but now since then, so I feel that Gen Z and young people, based what I'm seeing on social media and studying this stuff for a while now, I feel that he should and does have the upper hand. Your thoughts?
Yeah, that. I really don't know. I don't. I think it is, one thing that I picked up is that Harris's side has done a phenomenal job of making popular media, their ads look like popular media. And so I think that is in a lot of ways seeping into. One of the things that I do know is, for the most part, the younger millennials and Gen Z are more fiscally responsible than the older millennials. And as we play out, if we look at it right now, I think there's probably, I'm going to guess, 75 to 80 days, give or take, to the election. Yeah. Maybe a little bit more, give or take, something like that. I think what's really going to change the vote is which side helps people understand the financials of it. Talking to friends, talking to people, I would say those younger millennials, not quite Gen Z. Gen Z is very much looking into it. Can I afford this to live this life? And the answer is no, but it isn't. It's not tenable. And yet they see people that are influence or whatever else, the big money, but that isn't attainable for everyone, either by their skill set or just desire. But that's going to play out. I think the rest of this is just absolute, appetizers on Thanksgiving. The real turkey is, how do we really address and understand the financial piece? And if there's people that get the wool pulled over their eyes, they're going to vote accordingly. And this is my viewpoint. Either party, it doesn't matter. We're going to face tremendous financial strain the next 3 years, because we have such a hole that we're creating that it's going to be really hard for a lot of people to get out of. And I believe that is the bigger factor. And so whichever party can appeal to that in the way that they want to. Yeah. I was more confident, I would say 45 days ago, that Trump was going to win. I am less and less confident every day. And I look at that as it is what it is, right? But as someone who looks at it solely on one part of it, we're in a world of financial hurt today, whether people realize it or not. And there's, I think, a lot of people in business understanding that. Either candidate, it's going to get worse before it gets better. The question is, how long does the worst last?
Yeah, it seems to be there's always a lag, right? A lag effect on when these crashes occur. And you might see, and they typically happen right after a major bull run, right? At peak
and
euphoria.
We are.
Right. And once you're in that peak euphoria, all things are going to go up and everything. When you start feeling really, really comfortable and things are good, that's when you should
watch out. And I think, as I've been talking to people over the last several months, especially younger group, I look at my age group, and over the last, I would say, year and a half, where we're like, oh, we've seen this before. Because we did. We saw this 07, 08, 09. It was painful. And, so much of the, oh no, it'll go forever. Oh no, it'll go forever. Oh, this is just the new norm. Everything else, like, economics have a funny thing. They fix themselves. Yeah. They don't fix themselves when you manipulate them, but economics will fix themselves. And if it's allowed, economics will fix where we're at. It's unfortunately going to be painful for a lot of people. And talking to people recently, that pain is real. And, the difficulty is, sometimes the best way to save your leg is to cut it off at the ankle. And unfortunately, I think there's going to be people that lose their life because they're unwilling to cut it off at the ankle.
Reminds me of that movie World War Z when Brad Pitt cuts off that soldier's arm after she gets bit and saves her life from turning into a zombie.
I didn't see that one, Alex.
World War Z? What, Tyler?
No, I did not see that. Not really. I'm not really into a sci-fi,
zombie post-apocalyptic. It's good.
I wasn't into that stuff. But anyways, fun discussion today. As you guys are watching on LinkedIn, I'd love to hear your comments. Let me know your thoughts. My thoughts are just my thoughts based upon my experience. They are not indicative of what I think we absolutely all need to believe in. And please share with me. For those of you that are watching on YouTube, thanks for being here. Make sure to subscribe. We release podcasts on every Wednesday, as well as shorts throughout the week of either this content or podcasts. Love for you to continue to engage there. So make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell at the top as well to get notified whenever we do post new content. As well, listen to our podcasts on Wednesdays, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or here on YouTube. Thanks for being here. Until next time, choose to lead with impact.